Listen to me carefully. Greatness doesn't come from comfort, and it certainly doesn't come from playing it safe. Every person who has ever changed the world, every person who has ever stepped into their full potential has first been broken. They've faced pain, loss, failure, and moments where everything inside them screamed, I can't go on. And it's in that breaking, that raw, uncomfortable place where transformation begins. The cracks in your life, the struggles that feel unbearable, they're not your enemy, they're your invitation. Your breaking is the doorway to your breakthrough, and your greatness is waiting on the other side. When I tell you that pain is the catalyst for transformation, I'm not giving you a motivational slogan. I'm giving you the truth most people run from. Because pain doesn't show up to destroy you, it shows up to wake you up. It shows up to interrupt the patterns that have kept you small, limited, and disconnected from your true strength. Every person who has ever become someone they're proud of has walked through moments where life didn't make sense, moments where they questioned everything, moments where they felt broken. And it's in those exact moments that something powerful begins to shift. Think about it. When everything is going well, most people don't change. Comfort convinces you that good is enough. It convinces you to settle. But pain forces movement. Pain forces decisions you've been avoiding for months, sometimes years. Pain exposes the truth you try to hide from. When life shakes you, when it cracks you open, that discomfort is actually life creating space for the next version of you to emerge. The version that's stronger, more focused, more aligned with who you were meant to become. Some of the greatest breakthroughs you'll ever experience will be disguised as breaking points. You feel the pressure, you feel the weight. You feel like something inside you is being ripped away. But what if that feeling isn't the end of something? What if it's the beginning? Because that's the part most people don't understand. Breaking doesn't mean you're weak. Breaking means the shell that can no longer hold your potential is being shattered. The life you're meant to step into needs more space, more capacity, more clarity. And sometimes the only way to create that space is through pain. Pain forces you to stop running from yourself. It makes you confront the parts of your life that have been out of alignment. It makes you question the relationships that drain you, the habits that limit you, the excuses that keep you locked in place. It drags everything to the surface because you can't heal what you refuse to see. You can't grow from what you pretend doesn't hurt. And in those moments, when you're on your knees metaphorically, or sometimes literally, you start to see who you really are. You start to see what matters. You start to hear that voice inside you that's been whispering for years, the one you kept ignoring because you were afraid of what it would require from you. Pain amplifies that voice. It makes it impossible to avoid. And when you finally listen, everything begins to evolve. There's a version of you on the other side of this pain that you can't even imagine right now. A version that's bolder, more courageous, more disciplined, more alive. But to reach that version, the old one has to break. The old beliefs, the old fears, the old limits, the old story, the parts of you that were built from survival rather than purpose. They can't come with you. They weren't designed for where you're going. But here's the part that matters. Breaking doesn't mean quitting. Breaking doesn't mean giving up. Breaking means the transformation process has begun. You're being stretched, reshaped, redefined, and you may not like it. You may not understand it, but you will eventually be grateful for it because pain teaches you to rise. Pain teaches you to reclaim your power. Pain teaches you to stop negotiating your value. Most people want the growth without the breaking. They want strength without resistance. They want clarity without chaos. But it doesn't work that way. The greatest transformations happen when life puts you under pressure and you decide not to collapse, but to rise. You decide to take responsibility for your life. You decide to shift the meaning of your pain from, why is this happening, to what is this building inside me? Because if you shift the meaning, you shift the experience. If you shift the meaning, you shift your identity. And when your identity shifts, your entire life shifts with it. That's where real change happens inside you first. So if you're in a season where you feel broken, don't retreat, don't numb it, don't run from it, lean into it. There's strength in that crack. There is wisdom in that discomfort. There is a future version of you being formed right now in ways you can't fully see. Pain is not trying to punish you. It's trying to prepare you. It's trying to initiate the next chapter of your life. And that's why pain becomes the catalyst for transformation, because it breaks open everything that no longer serves you and makes room for everything that will. And that is where greatness begins. When you hear the idea that your old identity must shatter before a new one can rise, it might sound dramatic, but it's the truth of transformation. Every time you step into a bigger life, a more powerful vision, a higher standard, something inside you has to fall away. You can't carry who you used to be into the future you're trying to create. The identity that was built from fear, from doubt, from the limitations of your past, it can't survive in the environment of your greatness. And that's why life sometimes feels like it's pulling things out of your hands. It's not trying to punish you. It's trying to release you. Most people try to create a new life while clinging tightly to the old version of themselves. They say they want confidence, but hold on to the behaviors of insecurity. They say they want success, but cling to habits built around hesitation. They say they want growth, but stay loyal to the patterns that keep them small. And that conflict, that internal tug of war, is why they feel stuck. You cannot build a new identity on top of an old one. One of them has to break. Identity is not just who you think you are. It's what you tolerate, what you believe, what you settle for, and what you refuse to walk away from. Identity is the story you tell yourself about what's possible for you. And when that story is outdated, when it no longer reflects the future you're trying to step into, life will apply pressure until you let it go. Because if you don't let it go, you stay stuck in a loop, repeating the same emotions, the same decisions, the same outcomes. Think about the times in your life when everything felt like it was falling apart. Maybe you lost something important. Maybe a relationship ended. Maybe a job or opportunity slipped away. Maybe you reached a point where you could no longer pretend everything was fine. In those moments, the breaking wasn't just external, it was internal. Something inside you cracked because it had to. The identity you built to survive or fit in or protect yourself had reached its limit. It couldn't carry you any further. And as painful as that breaking felt, it created space. Space to be honest, space to breathe, space to choose differently. Because when the old identity breaks, it forces you to ask questions you've avoided. Who am I becoming? What do I really want? What am I no longer willing to tolerate? Those questions don't show up when life is calm. They show up when the old version of you is being dismantled. And here's the beautiful part: you get to choose the new identity. You get to decide the standards you will now live by. You get to choose the beliefs you're going to adopt, the habits you're going to embrace, the thoughts you're going to strengthen. Identity is not fixed. It's shaped. It's sculpted. It's created through conscious repetition and emotional commitment. When you decide to step into a new identity, everything in your life begins to reorganize around that decision. But you must first allow the old one to crumble. You must be willing to let the old story die. The story that says you're not enough. The story that says you can't change. The story that says your past defines your future. That story served you once. It protected you. It gave you a sense of certainty. But it is not the story that will lead you to greatness. Letting go of your old identity is uncomfortable because it feels like losing a part of yourself. And in many ways it is. You're losing the version of you that was shaped by old environments, old experiences, old expectations. But what you're gaining is the version of you that was always waiting behind those layers. The version of you that is stronger, clearer, more capable, more grounded in purpose. This is the moment where you stop letting your past dictate your present. This is where you stop negotiating with your potential. This is where you decide that your identity will no longer be built from fear, but from intention. And when that shift happens, the world doesn't stay the same. Your relationships change. Your decisions change. Your habits change. Your emotional home changes. You begin to live from a place of alignment instead of survival. The old you had limitations. The new you has possibilities. The old you is shaped by circumstances. The new you is shaped by choice, and transforming your identity is the greatest act of power you will ever experience, because once you change who you are at your core, everything else follows. The moment you allow the old identity to fall away, the new one begins to rise. When I tell you that pressure creates power, not weakness, I want you to understand this on a level far deeper than motivation. Pressure isn't the enemy, it's the signal. It's the force that shapes you, stretches you, and reveals the strength you didn't know you had. Most people misinterpret pressure because they've been conditioned to see it as a threat, something to run from, something to avoid. But pressure isn't what breaks you, avoiding it is. Resisting it is. Pretending it shouldn't be there is. Pressure is the environment where true power is forged. Think about anything strong in this world: metal, diamonds, muscle, character. Every one of them is shaped under pressure. Every one of them is strengthened through resistance. Nothing becomes powerful by remaining untouched. Nothing becomes resilient by staying comfortable. So when life applies pressure to you, when you feel the weight of responsibility, fear, uncertainty, or expectation, that's not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're being prepared. It's life saying you're ready for more. You're capable of more. Now let's see what you're made of. A pressure is the universe testing your capacity, not to expose weakness, but to expand strength. Because the truth is, you don't even know your real capacity until pressure forces you to discover it. You don't know how strong you are until life demands strength. You don't know how resilient you are until you're stretched to your limits and still find a way to move forward. Every breakthrough begins with pressure. The pressure of wanting more. The pressure of not fitting into your old life anymore. The pressure of carrying dreams that feel bigger than your current reality. The pressure of becoming the person you know you're meant to be. And yes, there are moments where that pressure feels overwhelming. Moments where your chest tightens, your thoughts race, and everything in you wants to pull back. But pulling back is the habit of your old identity. Pushing forward is the beginning of the new one. In those moments, I want you to remember something. Pressure doesn't show up in the lives of people who aren't meant for more. Pressure finds the ones who have potential. Pressure finds the ones who have a side of them worth uncovering. Pressure finds the ones life is preparing for a bigger role, a bigger responsibility, a bigger purpose. So if you feel pressure, don't interpret it as a burden. Interpret it as a signal that you're stepping into the next level of who you are. And let's be honest, some of the greatest growth in your life happened when your back was against the wall. Not when things were easy, not when everything was going your way. But when life tightened around you and you had no choice but to rise, that's when you found the courage you didn't know you had. That's when you discovered the strength you didn't realize was available to you. That's when you realized you were capable of more than your excuses, more than your fears, more than the limits you used to believe in. Pressure creates focus. When you're under pressure, the unnecessary falls away, distractions fade, clarity sharpens. You start to see what truly matters and what never did. You start to recognize which habits belong to your future and which belong to your past. Pressure forces you to stop drifting and start deciding. And the moment you start deciding with intention, your life begins to shift. Pressure also reveals your emotional home, the place you go in times of challenge. Some people go to fear, some go to frustration, some go to doubt. But when you decide to condition a new emotional home, one built on certainty, discipline, and possibility, pressure becomes fuel. It becomes something you use rather than something you suffer through. That's when pressure transforms from something that drains you into something that builds you. And the truth is this: without pressure, you can't grow. Without pressure, you can't expand. Without pressure, you can't access the next level of your identity, your potential, your life. Pressure is the weight that shapes the version of you that is ready for greatness. And once you learn to embrace it, instead of avoiding it, everything changes. So the next time you feel pressure, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You shift the question to, what is this preparing me for? Because that one shift turns pressure into purpose. And once pressure has purpose, it becomes power. That is how pressure creates power, not weakness. When I say that breakdowns become breakthroughs, when you choose meaning, I want you to feel the weight of that truth because it's one of the most powerful forces in your life. You see, life doesn't hand out success or transformation just because you want it. Life hands out experiences, and it's your interpretation, your meaning, your response to those experiences that determines whether you grow or you stay stuck. Pain and failure are not inherently negative. They are neutral. What makes them powerful, what makes them formative, is the meaning you assign to them. That is where your destiny is shaped. Most people experience breakdowns and immediately attach the wrong meaning to them. They see failure as proof of inadequacy. They see rejection as confirmation that they are not enough. They see obstacles as permanent roadblocks rather than temporary signals that something is being prepared inside them. And when you assign that kind of negative meaning to your experiences, you remain a victim to life's circumstances. You allow yourself to be defined by the very things that were meant to teach you strength. But the truth is, every setback, every failure, every moment of emotional collapse is a signal. It is life saying, pay attention. Something needs to change. Something inside you is ready to evolve. And the power comes when you decide not to interpret these moments as punishments, but as messages. You begin to ask yourself, what is this experience really building in me? What lesson is waiting to be uncovered here? That shift in meaning transforms despair into purpose, loss into learning, and breakdown into breakthrough. Think about the people you admire, the people who seem unstoppable. None of them avoided pain. None of them escaped failure. What separated them from the average person wasn't a life without challenges, it was their interpretation of those challenges. They chose to assign empowering meaning to experiences that could have easily defeated them. They chose to see hardship as the raw material for growth. They chose to see setbacks as setups for a future they couldn't yet see. Meaning changes everything. Meaning turns resistance into opportunity. It turns doubt into fuel. It turns fear into focus. And here's the incredible thing: you are the only one who can assign meaning to your experiences. No one else can do it for you. Life will give you the same circumstances it gives everyone else, but your interpretation, your story, your choice, that's uniquely yours. And when you decide to choose meaning deliberately, you reclaim power that you didn't even realize had been lost. There is a difference between enduring pain and mastering pain. Enduring pain is passive. It leaves you at the mercy of events. Mastering pain is active. It requires conscious thought, emotional awareness, and the decision to transform every negative experience into a positive force for change. When you choose meaning, you are no longer a victim. You are an alchemist, turning difficult experiences into the gold of your next level of growth. And meaning doesn't just shape your present, it shapes your future. When you consistently choose empowering interpretations, you begin to rewrite your identity. You begin to prove to yourself over and over that you are capable, resilient, and resourceful. Each challenge becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Each breakdown becomes a rehearsal for the breakthroughs yet to come. And before long, life stops feeling like it happens to you and starts feeling like it happens for you. Choosing meaning also requires courage because it forces you to face yourself honestly. It forces you to stop blaming circumstances, other people, or luck for where you are. It forces you to take responsibility, and responsibility, though heavy at first, is liberating. It is the portal through which all growth enters. When you step into responsibility, when you step into the power to choose meaning, you step into freedom. You step into control. You step into the next version of yourself. You will feel pain again. You will experience loss, disappointment, frustration. That is inevitable. But the difference is not the pain itself. The difference is what you do with it. Do you collapse under the weight, or do you bend, stretch, and reshape yourself with it? Do you allow it to define you, or do you use it to refine you? Choosing meaning gives you a choice, and with that choice comes power. Breakdowns are not the end. They are the beginning. They are the invitation to look deeper, to see what was hidden, to grow stronger, to rise higher. And the only thing that separates a breakdown from a breakthrough is the meaning you assign to it. When you choose meaning, every failure, every challenge, every moment that feels unbearable becomes the very fuel that launches you into greatness. When I tell you that your standards must rise above your struggles, I want you to feel how radical and transformative that idea truly is. Most people think change comes from motivation, from luck, from opportunity, or even from sheer desire. But the truth is, change comes from the standards you refuse to compromise. Your standards are your non-negotiables. They are the internal rules that define what you will accept and what you will no longer tolerate in your life. And here's the key: when your standards rise, your life rises automatically. When your standards fall, your life stagnates. It's that simple, and it's that powerful. Think about what happens when people face challenges. Many of them lower their standards instead of raising them. They tell themselves, this is good enough, when it's really settling. They excuse behavior, circumstances, and outcomes that are far below their potential. They let their struggles dictate their limits, rather than letting their standards dictate their growth. But that is the exact opposite of what creates greatness. Greatness is never achieved by lowering your expectations. It is achieved by holding yourself accountable to a standard that refuses to compromise even in the face of struggle. Struggle is inevitable. Pain, setbacks, and challenges are part of life. There is no path to greatness without them. But your response to struggle is defined by the standards you hold. If your standards are weak, you will collapse under pressure. If your standards are strong, you will rise above the pressure every single time. Standards are like a blueprint for your life. They determine the quality of your decisions, the caliber of your relationships, and the depth of your achievements. Without them, you drift. With them, you navigate with precision and purpose. Raising your standards begins with awareness. You have to honestly look at your current life and ask, what am I tolerating that I should no longer accept? Where am I allowing fear, excuses, or comfort to dictate my actions? That awareness is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront the truth, and truth is always uncomfortable in the moment. But it is also liberating, because the moment you see where you have compromised, you can make the conscious decision to stop compromising. You can declare, I will no longer settle for anything that does not reflect my potential. And it's not just about what you tolerate externally, it's about what you tolerate internally. What thoughts do you allow to dominate your mind? What emotions do you allow to control your behavior? What stories do you allow to limit your belief in yourself? Greatness requires internal standards that are as uncompromising as your external standards. You cannot rise above your struggles if you continue to allow doubt, fear, and negative self-talk to define your actions. You must demand excellence from yourself at every level: thoughts, emotions, actions, and habits. Raising your standards also means taking responsibility for everything in your life. It means recognizing that your current struggles are not permanent sentences, but signals. Signals that some standards need to shift, that some decisions need to change, that some habits need to be strengthened. And when you take responsibility and raise your standards, struggle becomes fuel. Every challenge becomes a mirror reflecting where your standards need to grow, and every obstacle becomes an opportunity to demonstrate to yourself that your new standard is stronger than your old limitations. Most people let life define their standards. They react to circumstances rather than define their circumstances. They let the world decide what is acceptable and then try to make the best of it. But you can choose differently. You can decide that your standards define your reality, not the other way around. And when you make that decision, life begins to rearrange itself. Doors open, opportunities appear, people respond differently to you, your confidence changes, your results change, everything shifts because standards are not just rules, they are magnets for the life you want to create. Rising above your struggles does not mean struggles disappear. They will still come. Life will still test you. But when your standards are higher than your struggles, you meet every challenge from a place of strength, clarity, and conviction. You don't shrink. You don't compromise. You don't settle. You push forward because the standard you hold is non-negotiable, and that standard gives you power, direction, and momentum. And here's the secret most people never realize: once you raise your standards, you don't have to force yourself every day. You don't have to rely on willpower alone. Your standards create automatic alignment in your life. They become the invisible architecture guiding every choice, every decision, every action you take. You simply operate at a level that is congruent with the standard you refuse to compromise. That is how life begins to move for you rather than against you. So if you want to rise above your struggles, it's not about finding easier paths. It's about holding a higher standard for yourself than your struggles demand and refusing to settle for anything less. That is where true greatness begins. Once you've been broken, once life has stripped away what no longer serves you, the most critical choice you will ever make is how you rebuild. And here's the truth: rebuilding with purpose is the difference between staying stuck in the ruins and rising stronger than ever. Too many people, when they face a breaking point, rush to put the pieces back together without clarity, without intention, without vision. They rebuild with panic, with fear, with desperation, and the result is usually the same, more of the same patterns, more of the same limits, more of the same version of themselves that got broken in the first place. True transformation only happens when you rebuild with purpose. Rebuilding with purpose means you start by asking yourself the hard questions. Who do I want to be? What life do I refuse to settle for anymore? What does success, happiness, freedom, or fulfillment actually look like for me? Not what others tell me it should look like. Most people avoid these questions because they are uncomfortable. They require honesty, courage, and vision. But if you're willing to sit in that discomfort, clarity emerges. And clarity is the blueprint for your next level. When you rebuild with purpose, every decision becomes deliberate. You stop reacting to circumstances. You stop letting the past dictate your choices. You start building with intention, brick by brick, habit by habit, thought by thought. And the key here is consistency. Purposeful rebuilding is not a one-time event. It's a process. Every day you reinforce your new identity. Every day you take action that aligns with your vision. Every day you refuse to compromise on your standards, you are rebuilding stronger than before. Most people fear the void after being broken. They feel lost. They feel unsure of what to do next. That fear is natural, but it is also a test. It is the universe asking, are you ready to create consciously, or will you default to what is familiar? If you rebuild without purpose, you default. You rebuild in patterns shaped by fear, limitation, and old beliefs. But if you rebuild with purpose, every decision, every action, every thought is aligned with the life you are determined to create. That is the power of intentional reconstruction. Rebuilding with purpose also requires patience. Transformation is not instantaneous. Growth takes time, and the process of rebuilding is both a test of endurance and a demonstration of commitment. It requires showing up even when results aren't immediate. It requires believing in the version of yourself you are creating, even when you cannot yet see it fully. That is how resilience is built. That is how character is forged. That is how greatness is born from the ashes. Another critical aspect of rebuilding with purpose is learning from the breakdown itself. Every moment of failure, every loss, every fracture contains lessons that are invaluable for your next phase. To rebuild effectively, you must integrate those lessons into your new structure. What caused the breakdown? What patterns need to change? What beliefs need to be abandoned? Ignoring these questions is like building a house on sand. You might feel like you are moving forward, but the structure will not withstand the pressures that life inevitably brings. Purposeful rebuilding incorporates wisdom. It is guided by the lessons of your past rather than trapped by them. Rebuilding with purpose also means choosing your influences carefully. The people you allow into your life, the environments you operate in, the information you consume. All of it shapes your new identity. When you rebuild with purpose, you curate every element of your life so that it supports the person you are becoming. You eliminate what distracts, what drains, what diminishes, and you surround yourself with what empowers, challenges, inspires you. Your life becomes a reflection of the deliberate choices you make, not the circumstances you inherited. Finally, rebuilding with purpose is about reclaiming power. When life breaks you, it temporarily takes control. When you rebuild with purpose, you take control back. You become the architect of your own destiny. You are no longer a passive participant in the story of your life. You are the conscious creator. And that choice to rebuild with purpose, to create consciously, to rise intentionally, is the defining factor between those who remain victims of circumstance and those who become unstoppable forces of transformation. So when you find yourself broken, remember this: the process of rebuilding is not just about putting yourself back together. It is about creating a stronger, wiser, more intentional version of yourself that could never have existed without the breakdown. That is where true greatness is born.